Hi folks, I'm One Short Eye, and this is an any percent speedrun of the RPG adventure hybrid Quest for Glory 3 Wages of War. Today, you'll learn the insane tech, glitches, and skips that runners use to beat the game in under 10 minutes. The runner is Lemming, the current world record holder.
The main appeal for me speedrunning the any percent of this category is definitely just the sheer level of broken it is. When I started speedrunning Quest for Glory 3, it was already broken. Since then, we've just been stomping on the remaining big shards of glass that were left over to make it that much more busted.
In the Quest for Glory series, players choose from 3 different classes. You can also earn the Paladin class by doing good deeds in the previous game and then importing that character. So there are 4 different leaderboard subcategories. Lemming is running as a thief, which is the fastest. Lemming names his hero Zappy Stabby, which will make a lot more sense later. We have 50 skill points to allot, and Lemming dumps all his points into magic. There's an extra cost for putting points into a skill you don't already have, so Lemming only gets his magic up to 30. Thankfully, that's just enough for what we need at the very end of the run. Time starts appropriately on clicking start, and Lemming skips the opening cutscene. Rakesh, a Liontar, has invited our hero to Tarna, Rakesh's homeland. Trouble brews between the Leopard Men and the Simbani, 2 tribes on the brink of war. But Lemming is a speedrunner and not a diplomat. He enters the menu and turns the speed up, which makes sense, and turns the difficulty up, which doesn't, but it will in a moment. Lemming selects the run icon to go fast, and speaking of running, Lemming is running this game on DOSBox at 10,000 cycles. This is the default configuration in the Steam and GOG distributions. Lemming then heads to the market. We can't buy anything with our foreign currency, so we visit the money changer. This triggers a scripted sequence with a thief running away. When the thief is on the screen, you can't interact with the money changer. On medium and low difficulties, the game adjusts the speed slider to about midway. But on the highest difficulty, the game doesn't change the speed at all, and that's why Lemming increased the difficulty earlier. You have to set it before you get here because the speed slider gets locked during the cutscene. After exchanging his money, Lemming leaves, and a Liontar guard has caught the thief for you. This leads to a cutscene in the Hall of Judgment where the thief is named Honorless. You can meet and befriend him later in the game if you care about being heroic, which we don't. We're then brought before Raja, Rakesh's brother and king of Tarna. Normally this conversation has a lot of pauses in it, and this gives you the choice of speaking or remaining silent out of respect. But for some reason, if you look at yourself, and I mean like a lot, like furious narcissism, the pauses don't happen and the conversation goes quicker. During that sequence, the game put us into walk mode. So, Lemming puts the difficulty slider back down and switches to running. Lemming sprints to the market, preparing his money ahead of time, and buys some olive oil. This won't come into play until much later. There's nothing more that's required to do today, so Lemming's going to sleep the rest of it away. Learning when and how to sleep in Quest for Glory games actually has a name: bed tech. Each game in the series has different rest mechanics where you advance time and regain some health and stamina. In this game, you can rest if one of these conditions is true. It's a new day, you have half of your max stamina, or it's been more than 1 in-game hour since you last rested. And it's that third one that we care about. The way it works is that the game compares the current time of day to the time of day last rested plus an hour. Thankfully for speedrunners, the code for resting is bugged. You would expect the game to advance time and then set this variable, the one tracking when you rested, except they coded it backwards. The variable gets set first, and then time advances. So as soon as you're done resting, the game already thinks it's an hour later. So Lemming starts resting in 1-hour increments. There's also a small optimization here with the bed. Once you select your resting period, pressing escape will select the same option on the rest menu. This cuts down on a lot of mouse movement. At last, it's night, and we get another option: sleep until morning. Pay attention to the amount of time this day-to-night transition takes. That'll become important later. We're now on the morning of day 2. At the end of the day, the game automatically takes you over to the bed, forcing you to rest up for a meeting the next day. So, what if, at the beginning of day 2, we pressed escape to reselect the previous rest option? Even though it's not visible, that would still be sleep until morning. Well, runners thought of that. You do skip the entire day and sleep through the night again, but it doesn't transition you to the meeting in the morning like it should, so this isn't worth doing. However, in August of 2021, Lemming found a way to make the day-to-night animation shorter from day 2 to day 3.
Right now, we wait about 2 or 3 seconds between resting, and then we rest again, and that will typically allow us to advance time. Often, we do it a little bit too early, and you get a text box saying you're too impatient to rest, and you have to keep trying.
Hey, Editor One Short Eye here. If you've really been paying attention, you might have a question. Lemming just said that runners have to wait a few seconds in between rests. But, as I explained earlier, it only has to be more than 1 hour of in-game time. And, if you look closely, sometimes it's possible to get 2 rests in a row without waiting. As Lemming told me,
we're still trying to figure out how to make that more efficient. Technically speaking, if we're reading the code right, we should only have to wait 1 second, but that's just not the case.
So, what gives? While making this video, I talked to Sluicebox, an amazing guy with a lot of SCI knowledge. He dug into the code and found the answer. There's a weird bit of game logic that happens when advancing time. If the game clock is even, it adds 1, and if it's odd, it subtracts 1. Then there's some other math that happens, but in short, an hour in Quest for Glory 3 is 150 clock units. Sleeping for an hour advances the clock either 151 units or 148 units. Just over an hour or just under an hour. So, now that you know, let's go back to Lemming in the past, who was just telling us about how he counts the seconds between resting.
So one thing I was doing during collection runs, just to kind of help me get into a rhythm, was I would start casting Flame Dart in the in-room, just 2 or 3 at a time, just to kind of count them out as seconds. It also had the funny feature of permanently staining the walls, like the Flame Dart effect wouldn't go away. So I think that's also why I enjoyed doing it, just to break the game even a little bit more. And then one time during practice, I was casting Flame Dart. Must have miscounted my resting portions because it was time to be summoned for the Audience of the King, but I kept spamming Flame Dart, and Hero actually, instead of going to bed, which is normally what the game makes you do, the Flame Dart action overrid that action, and suddenly I had control of the character again. Lo and behold, the Audience of the King is starting, and we saved about 14 seconds of very slow sleeping.
However, casting Flame Dart to skip sleeping was difficult and inconsistent.
I tried my best to get into a rhythm with it, but it was just way too unreliable. So for like a few months after discovering it, every time we had a newcomer into the QFG speedrun community, I usually was half joking, saying, "Welcome, do you want to fix my skip for me?" And then one day SwimFan, who was one of the newer runners at the time, I told him that, and I guess he just took it to heart. And within like a day later, he was like, "Hey, it turns out that you can get the skip by just spamming the chest." It was so perfectly simple. I was kind of kicking myself for not even noticing that, but sure enough, that is a much more reliable way to get that trick. Still a little difficult, but like it's night and day.
Back in our run, Lemming counts the number of times he's rested. Right after he triggers the final rest, he starts clicking on the chest. This interrupts the lie down animation, and the game gives control of the hero back over to the player. The room exit is disabled, and Lemming has to sit on this cushion to re-enable it. Now we can leave the room, having skipped most of the day-to-night animation. Zappy Stabby is brought before Raja again, and tasked with solving the conflict between the Simbani and the Leopard Men. The same eye trick works here, and Lemming zooms through the conversation. Now we're on the overworld map. Because we skipped turning night into day, the game is in a state of perpetual darkness. It's supposed to look like this. In a scripted sequence, the game takes over and Rakesh is supposed to escort the hero to the Simbani village. This is where the mid-game opens up. There's a lot that happens there, but in short, you train for many days, find the Leopardmen village, and arrange a peace conference in Tarna between the warring tribes. Hope is short-lived though. Demons possess the Leopardman chief, people die, and Tarna is thrown into chaos. You know, I really like this quote in a Let's Play from Alex of the Adventurers Guild. It's kind of silly that we wasted so much time figuring out the Simbani Leopardmen stuff when the real villains were across yon waterfall in yonder lost city. Couldn't I have just made my way over there instead of returning magical artifacts to various indigenous groups? Well, about that.
I was in the middle of doing a 100% run as a fighter. You start off day 3 with the script walking with Rakesh to the Simbani village. And every once in a while, Rakesh will pop up with some dialogue that you have to skip past. I was rapidly clicking both the left and right mouse buttons just to get rid of the dialogue box as quickly as possible. And I kept clicking. And then when the screen transitioned on the overworld to the Simbani village screen, somehow during that transition, I right-clicked to the walk button and then clicked it. And at first I didn't notice anything until I realized not only that the path that I was walking on was not the one I was supposed to be walking on, but Rakesh had stopped talking. And then I got really confused.
Uh-oh. That was kind of... Wait, what the heck did I just do?
I realized immediately that I had broken something, but wasn't sure what.
As the transition happens, there's a very small window before the game takes over your cursor again. When you click the walk icon on the world map, the game gives control back to the player. Runners would later discover that it's easier to do if you go up to the main menu. I'm going to bump up the brightness a bit because some of the screens become difficult to see otherwise. Lemming performs the glitch and skips the Simbani village. Once you transition to the following screen, Rakesh will disappear. For that reason, runners call this glitch
David's Do-Gooder Ditch, or DDD for short, and I named it that because I like alliteration.
Because of the glitch, time no longer passes and random encounters are disabled. Lemming safely travels another screen to the right, ignoring this giant tree which also features in the game. And hey, what's this? We have a new companion, Manu the monkey. So here's what's happening. First, the game checks flag 88 to see if it's time for Rakesh to escort you. This would normally be set to false once you get to the Simbani village. Because we skipped that, the flag never gets unset. Then this screen also checks flag 88 to decide whether to engage the walking script for Manu. But that wasn't supposed to be set until after the failed peace conference. In other words, the end game is now open and we've skipped all of that mid-game stuff I talked about earlier. It's seriously most of the game. Before DDD, the world record thief time was a 2026. After DDD, the time dropped to 10:18, and the categories were split into any percent and any percent no major skips.
You don't visit the Simbani village at all. You don't visit the World Tree at all. These are major event places that you don't deal with. Like, you don't talk to people, you don't meet people. I mean, I think it's hysterical that like all these people show up to help you at the end and you haven't met any of them.
Lemming asks Manu about the Lost City, a place we were supposed to find out about earlier, and he reluctantly agrees to take us. I mentioned earlier that time no longer passes because of the DDD glitch. This is helpful because otherwise, Manu stops you at night to sleep. Next, we have to make our way across a chasm by a waterfall. As a thief, we started the game with a grapnel. We were supposed to buy a rope at the market and combine the two items. But the game doesn't check if you have the rope here. So, Lemming uses the grapnel, a rope appears out of nowhere, and he dances across. Next, there's a scripted encounter in the forest. We're supposed to fight this evil demon worm, but fortunately, we can just run away. The game tries to stop you from doing this, but the screen exits are only disabled if you use the mouse. Using the keyboard controls, Lemming leaves the screen before the creature appears, runs for a bit, and skips the fight. In Quest for Glory collection runs, where you take the same character through each of the 5 games, you can also use the Levitate spell to the same effect, and it's a bit faster. However, a new thief that puts points into magic won't have that spell, only the Zap, Flame Dart, Force Bolt, and Detect Magic spells. At the Lost City, we say goodbye to Manu. There are guards patrolling, and the game makes us wait until one of them leaves. Lemming then climbs up and grabs the gem from this statue's eye. He has to wait for another guard to completely leave the screen, which takes a little while. We could use the fetch spell to grab the gem and skip the wait if we had that spell, but we don't, so we can't. Before DDD, runners got the gem while grabbing a Dispel Potion ingredient, which meant not having to climb up and wait. But if you don't have the gem, the game puts one in the statue so you're not stuck. Once the guard is gone, Lemming climbs back down, and by climbing back down, I of course mean jumping down to save half a second. Lemming puts the gem into the wall and enters a magic door. These 2 demon guards are super strong, so Lemming turns on sneak mode. He uses the olive oil we bought earlier on the hinges of this door so they don't squeak, and picks the lock. Here, we find Rakish's kidnapped daughter, Rishaka. A demon possesses her, and we're forced into a fight. Now, normally this is a tough one since we haven't developed our character's abilities at all. Because of the demon's power and his mean right hook, speedrunners call this the Mike Tyson fight.
Mike Tyson, the monster, not the person. It's the Mike Tyson fight, as we have affectionately called him because it's like Punch-Out, is he's a bit of a punk. And he was a bit of a struggle for a while. Now, the way that we used to play through the game, it wasn't as big of a deal. The original any percent category goes through the normal focus of the game, and it buys the Dispel Potion. And you can use a Dispel Potion on this monster before you fight it, disappears. Fight doesn't happen, so it's a non-issue.
But after David discovered DDD, gathering the items to make the Dispel Potion would lose a lot of time.
Once that glitch happened, we suddenly had to deal with this fight that we are woefully unprepared for as far as the skills go.
The strat then became to load up on magic and cast Flame Dart. But if you cast Flame Dart too quickly, it doesn't do as much damage, so you can't spam it.
So the development was me losing to him lots and lots and lots. Magic is a very powerful tool that can be used to really, put the hurt on him. But the problem is that you usually don't have enough MP to rely on it solely. Eventually, I just started incorporating jabs into it, and that made it very consistent. I don't know why it took me as long as it did to figure that out. I mean, it's kind of comical. I mean, I think it took me like a couple months to realize, why don't I just throw in a couple stabs here and there, and if it gets some extras, that works. And that was the route, just kind of alternating slowly between stabs, because if you cast the spells too quick, the damage actually gets canceled out.
Alternating Flame Dart and stabbing stopped runs from getting killed, but how long it took to defeat Mike Tyson was still inconsistent. With the hero's stats as low as they are, stabs only have a 20% chance of connecting. But then, runners started training Zap in the Quest for Glory 2 remake during the collection runs. Zap charges your weapon and increases the damage of your next physical hit. So, it made sense to quickly charge a dagger in Quest for Glory 3. Mr. P.R. Miller then discovered a much better strat. First, cast Flame Dart. After it connects, cast the Zap spell. Right after casting Zap, click the center button, which switches between magical and physical attacks. If you do it fast enough, the hero stabs with the dagger even though you didn't select that attack, and it has a near 100% chance of connecting.
Oh my gosh, there's a consistent way to hit him.
This is undoubtedly a bug, but no one currently knows why it works. So, Lemming zaps and stabs his way to victory. He misses one or two of his attacks, which means that Tyson has just a sliver of health when the hero's mana runs out. Thankfully, it's not too much of a time loss, and Zappy Stabby doesn't have to stab for much longer. With the demon gone, Rishaka is back to normal. A magic portal opens up, and all of our friends, most of whom we never met, show up to fight the demons. Almost all of these characters are associated with glitches in one way or another. This is Johari, the leopard woman. After freeing her in a normal playthrough, you have to find her in the jungle. You can later find her again, as if it's the first time, to skip what was meant to be a mandatory agility check. Yasufu holds the Spear of Death, the magic weapon of the Simbani village. He gained this after the demons killed his father at the peace conference, the one we never attended or even set up in the first place. Harami, the thief, can be skipped entirely in collection runs, which makes these late-game interactions even more awkward. Rakesh heals his daughter with some magic, and Manu drops in. It would be nice to skip this whole cutscene, but runners haven't found a way to do so. Before the fight, if you cast the trigger spell, you can run around where you're not supposed to, even off the screen, but this doesn't actually help anything. In this segment, our companions face a mirror version of themselves in combat. There's no way to actually win this. Instead, we have to wait until our health gets low enough. Lemming speeds up the process by draining his stamina and continuing to attack. He has to make sure not to go too far because you can die here. At the right moment, Harami, the thief, backstabs our doppelganger. This gives us a chance to slip away and defeat the Demon Wizard. That's this guy, and he's trying to summon the Demon Master. If you wait too long, the Demon Master crosses over and literally causes a thermonuclear blast. What's supposed to happen is that we climb up this pillar, use the rope and grapnel to climb to the other pillar, do that again, and then throw the grapnel at the Demon Wizard to send him into the World Gate. But remember how the game didn't check for the rope at the waterfall? No such luck this time. Without the rope, we can't beat the game as a thief. So, what to do? In 2016, Mr. P.R. Miller discovered something amazing. During the screen transition, if you rapidly left-click in the correct spot, the hero will go out of bounds.
I just started clicking like crazy, and I think it works very similar to the DDD glitch. At least, not exactly the same, but it's got kind of a similar premise to it, but it only seems to work with the thief. Pretty substantial, I mean, considering that you can skip an entire item. How I found it, I wish I could tell you. I mean, it's been a number of years. I just know that my first live stream at RPG Limit Break 2016, I was using it then.
During Miller's run at RPG Limit Break in 2016, Lori and Corey Cole, the creators of the series, were there remotely. Corey explained that this was actually a pretty common bug.
Every scene in every Sierra game, they had to, go through and test every pixel to find out if there was a hole in the map that allowed you to walk onto the wall or the ceilings.
I found a couple in this one.
Almost all of them, but but they can never find all of them.
Lemming misses the trick the first time, but helpfully the game has an autosave just before the transition, and Lemming can try again. He runs through the air, over to this platform, and sends the bad guy packing, which is the last meaningful input and when time ends for the run. And, in case you're wondering, the current world record is an 8:41. Everything is safe and everyone exchanges some kind words before Zappy Stabby starts a dance party of one. I'm sure there's nothing evil about this at all. Anyway, a big thank you to the runners who answered my questions and gave suggestions. They're awesome people and you can find their info in the description. Thank you also to my patrons for their amazing support. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That's it for now, and I'll see you in the next one.